the best thing ever is finding people that are better than you at different things and just letting them do it and get it out of their way.
Mr. Corey, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot. Thanks
Bananatag.com, always wearing the brand. Corey, when I see you, people probably, well, if you're listening, you're definitely going to see, but you've got the shoes on. How many pairs of yellow shoes do you own?
I mean, right now I probably just own 2, but over my life, it hasn't been that many. It's been probably like 6 different pairs,
Okay.
But I buy multiples at a time now so that I make sure
If
that I always have one ready to go.
They always look fresh. Yeah. The shoes are fresh. Tell us about Bananatag. What is it? What do you guys do? And how long have you been doing it? Because it's been a while.
It's been a while. So Bananatag is internal communications software. So we're a software as a service platform. We help internal communicators of the biggest companies in the world basically create really engaging emails, send them out, and then measure them so they get to see how people are interacting. So it's an internal comms tool for employees inside of the company as opposed to like a marketing tool that's hammering out marketing messages. We've been doing that since 2011 now. It started off as a sales tool, but after a few years moved into the internal communication space, and that's what we do today.
Was it called Bananatag prior to the communication stuff?
It was called Bananatag prior to the communications. So
when did Bananatag start the domain?
Probably around the same time. So August 2011, give or take, somewhere around there.
Okay, but before, when it was the sales tool?
It was still Bananatag. So we came up with the name from the very beginning and then launched it as a sales tool. And over time, as people were using it, people said, hey, can I use it for my internal communications? And we said, sure, why not? And then we found out more about that market. And in around 2015, basically fully focused on that side of the market.
Got it. And I believe your family's involved. I know your brothers. Was your dad involved in the early days?
Almost everyone's involved or was involved at some point, funny enough. So my brother's one of the co-founders, my older brother. And then my mom she wrote the first version of the Outlook add-in. So she was is a programmer, I guess. She wrote that. And then my best friend growing up, he is also one of the co-founders. He's a CTO. And his sister married my brother who's in the business. So we're all fairly tight-knit group.
Dude, and you guys are what, 100 and some people now?
Yeah, I think about 120 people now.
Crazy business. Yeah. And, we got to spend time I do an annual trip, Bald Face. Yeah. And the hotel we were staying in, I don't know your dad. I'd love to meet him someday, but it sounds like he's a bit of an inventor because you said, we're in this hotel and there's on the doors, next to the doors, there's like essentially a clean or not clean and a busy a light system. Yeah. And you're like joking like, yeah, my dad created that and this was his first customer at this hotel we're staying at.
Yeah, so I think they created it like jointly, maybe with someone involved there, but my dad today still actually is part of that and does hotel electronic stuff.
What is that?
It's called Access Industries. So they do hotel electronics. There's the do not disturb, housekeeping type signage outside. But then also it's gotten into motion sensors, contact sensors, occupancy detection, tray tracking in the halls. So a lot of different stuff. They even have stuff that I don't know about these days.
That's crazy. Yeah. And did you learn about entrepreneurship from your dad?
Yep, I definitely did. So I learned how much work it can be, definitely, and also just the exciting parts of it. So I went to Africa for a few years and kind of started a water bottling company there for an NGO. And then when I came back, I was working with my dad, and that's where I really got to see sort of the sales function. That's actually where we had the idea for Bananatag. So we were looking for a way to get metrics on sales emails that marketers and other people had when they were sending. And
this is like early days of like the Toad apps and like...
Yeah, that would have been... So it was all around when we had the idea, we looked online and nothing else was there. And so we started working away at it. And by the time we launched, there were the other early ones like Tout app and Yesware, I think were all sort of coming out at that time. So very early days of that.
That's crazy. What was your first business venture? And let's just start with that. Like, how did you start in the entrepreneurial world? Yeah, so really my first business venture would have been Bananatag. So from working for my dad, it was the first company that I started. Had ideas before that, but never really got into something there.
the first time I had a taste, I always thought I liked running a business. I always said back in the day, maybe now I like running it again, but when I started, I said, hey, I really like running a business. And I got my first taste, I would say, of kind of like a startup when I was in Africa, and I got to set up that water bottling plant. And the concept of just figuring something out, reading about it, making it happen and creating this thing, that's when I realized I like creating this stuff. And then when I came back and started working with my dad, that's when I got probably more into the other facets of the business and really learned more about the sales and management side of things and how all that works. But that would have been my Bananatag was really my first foray into that myself. Yeah.
And what's it been like, running this company? I'm assuming you guys have raised very little capital.
Yeah.
Big team. You are the CEO, but you have these partners. How did you end up CEO, and what's it been like, having so many family members involved?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I think there's some things, a lot of people think it's probably really difficult having family involved. I think there's pluses to it, and then also there's times where it's difficult too. So I'd say one of the biggest strengths of having the different family members and friends involved is you're really able to rely on people. You have that trust and you have each other's backs. And so when times are tough, if it was, there have been times where if it was just random people banded together doing it, looking back on it, you wonder if you would have made it through everything. But having it be the family group, it's made that easier. And we kind of knew we can't fail at this. We're all in it. But then at the same time, you definitely have, interesting relationships where, I have my best friend as well. Like I work with him all the time. And so you don't have the normal, I would say, reporting relationships that you might have in a traditional business where there's a CEO and hires people and they can just like kind of do whatever. You're always kind of taking that family portion into account as well and making sure to consider that. So I'd say it's definitely been interesting, but
when you say interesting, I feel like there's stories behind that.
I don't know if there's stories. I mean, I think all of us would have different stories. It's just there's an added element, I think, of stuff to consider. And so
has there been any members that didn't make the cut that you had to let go?
No. Okay. So we're all still involved. So there's no like interesting, crazy stories or anything like that. It's it's been great. I think one of the interesting things is like I would say maybe we're all fairly stubborn. I know I can be a little stubborn. And so there's times where like my brother will think he's right, I think I'm right, and Isaac thinks he's right. And we have this great way of kind of balancing in the middle and maybe being the best version of right with all the different people's thoughts and opinions. So it's been cool. And I think in the early days as well, it was really especially a strength of ours because we had the Vancouver office and the Kelowna office. And so with Chris and Isaac in the Vancouver office and me up here, we were really able to run two smaller companies for a longer time rather than having this like big, 50-person company or something that we had to take care of or try to figure out a remote office with remote employees. We always had people there who were pretty invested in the business and could sort of lead that part of the business.
So when you made the pivot from the email sales tool to the email communication tool, I'm assuming there was revenue involved, and like, how did you make that decision? Was it easy?
Yeah, so there were a couple things at play there. The one piece was definitely more revenue. I mean, the subscriptions we were selling were, I think originally something like $5 a month, so $60 a year. And then as we started looking at the whole internal communication side of things, we were talking thousands of dollars a year. So what that really allowed us to do was actually create a sales team and build out that way. Whereas with the $5 a month product, that just wasn't a possibility. We kind of had to grow as fast as we would grow by people finding us and signing up. So that was one piece. And then I think the other part that was a big thing for us and really spoke to us was that problem of solving an internal communications problem. That got us all really excited because as we started to learn more about it and what some of the challenges were and what people were facing, the whole idea of employee engagement and being, happy at work, knowing what's going on, that was something that spoke to us, I think, as a founding team and a direction that we wanted to go as well. So combination of those two things, I would say, are the main things that drove it that way.
Was there a chance that you almost didn't make the pivot?
No, there wasn't a chance that we didn't make the pivot. Like
So this was once you realized what did you see to make you decide you should pull on that string?
So we had a few people, I think maybe in support calls, I think is what it was. And it was actually funny enough, our database was getting, it was like the CPU was getting high on it. And we were trying to figure out, what it was that was causing all this extra load. And CTO was like looking at queries and going like, okay, what's going on? We realized that people were sending these emails that we thought were like meant to be one-to-one emails, because that's what you do, to lists and lists of people. And we'd never actually designed the software to handle something like that. And so that once we realized that, we're like, why are these people doing it? And then we started watching, and there'd be like spikes and spikes. They were trying to
Who's seeing this email?
And
corporations.
It was just aggregate data as well. So they were just interested in knowing not necessarily who opened up the email at the company, but how the email was performing, because they just had no metrics up until that point. And so we saw that people were using the software in a way, or at least we could see the load in our systems, and then knew what was causing it, and started talking to people more. I was getting on the phone call with different customers or people who were looking to use the software, and suddenly we started to create this picture of like what people were actually trying to do and the need that they were trying to solve. And so once we found that, we just kind of kept on going with that. And I think that's something we've probably done fairly well since the beginning, is listening to customers, listening to how people are using the tool, what the struggles are, and pinpointing, what it is and how we can best help them. And we still do that today. I would say it's one of our strengths.
So as CEO, was it natural that you were going to be the CEO based on, like, how did you end up with that role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, when we initially started,
me and my brother are both entrepreneurs, and if we started a business together, I'm not sure it'd be as obvious who.
Yeah. So, I mean, originally, like Isaac, my co-founder and best friend, he built kind of the first version of the software, and we were working together on that piece. And so there, like, it was obvious he was a CTO. My mom was programming the add-in, and so she was helping on that side of things, and that piece is pretty obvious. I think for me, I was kind of pulling the different pieces together and doing that, and so it was just kind of...
You were the only person who wasn't writing code.
I wasn't... Yeah, exactly. I wasn't writing code.
CEO.
And then Chris came in on the marketing side, and so that was that. So there wasn't a lot of... it wasn't like a big battle or anything like that. It was kind of just how things fit together and piece together.
And it sounds glamorous, but in the early days, you're the guy that's getting the sandwiches and making sure everybody...
I was doing a lot of support.
Yeah.
Like a lot of support. I must say, I think Isaac probably worked twice as hard as I did in the early days, building everything and making that. And I was kind of there for moral support, and then trying to convince him to quit his job so that we could put more time into that. So that was probably one of my bigger contributions and everything. But yeah, he was working away, and I was answering support tickets. Nonstop.
How did you fund the business in the early days?
So in the early days, so my mom and dad are both part of the business as well. And at the time, I was still working for my dad, and then this was kind of evenings and weekends in terms of when we were working on it. So we'd finish the job, or Isaac had a full-time job, I had a full-time job, and then in the evening we'd be plugging away, and up early in the morning plugging away, and then back at work. So
weekends as well?
Weekends as well, like every day. Every day, a lot of strain on relationships and things like that. But, at the time we were, it was early, and we're like, this is what we need to do to make it happen. And so we were basically all in and doing that. So that's how we funded everything to begin with. And then, then Isaac, at some point we started getting a little bit of revenue trickling in. Then Isaac was able to reduce to, 1 day off a week, and then 2 days off a week. And I had a little bit of flexibility.
He went first.
He went first. I had a little bit of flexibility in that I could still answer some support tickets and things while I was, also helping my dad with the stuff there. So that's how we were kind of able to fund the first bit. And then eventually we had enough money in the bank where we're like, oh, hey, we can hire someone. And like, this is a crazy novel concept, and learned a lot of stuff along the way there. But initially it was from that. Yeah.
Just sweat equity.
Yeah. Sweat equity. And then, benefiting from the fact that that I was actually able to work for my dad while I was able to do that. So so that helped as well for sure.
What does it look like today though, running a 100-person company? What does your day look like?
So it can depend quite a bit. I find one week to the next, I'm always kind of trying to figure out what my job looks like. I've always kind of seen it as whenever I'm doing something, my job is to find someone else to do that, and then I fall into the next thing, and that's like the next thing that needs to be fixed, and so I keep rotating. So it changes quite a bit. Where I spend most of my time though, and I think it's probably because I gravitate towards it more than anything, is the whole piece kind of between the customer and sales, and then tech and product, and how these two things really fit together. So on any given day, I'm trying to look at like revenue. Revenue for me is like the main thing. How do we grow? How do we grow faster? How do we do that? And what pieces do we need to make this engine like go faster, work faster, hit our targets quicker, all that. And so some of it still, I'm connected to that whole tech, kind of the solution engineering part of the role, because I think because I like it. But I find it gives me really good insight into how customers are trying to use things, and where we can structure things differently to create a better system overall, and be more efficient with all that.
So on the product side, on the customer,
I'd say customer facing, and then just some of the general things, some of the general more boring stuff that goes with the business, and then chatting with the co-founders, and looking at different parts of the market, looking at different partnership opportunities, all those different types of pieces. So.
How did you learn to build the company? If you look back in the last decade, it's very rare companies even make it to 10 years. Mm-hmm. How did you learn how to do that?
I guess probably just by, I grew up definitely around, watching my dad and watching him build the business. And so some lessons that I took from there, a lot of lessons that I took from there, to be honest. What would some of
those lessons be?
I think a lot around hard work, and just making sure you give it your all. I got to work with sales teams, see product people. So I got a lot of, I'd say, general knowledge around different pieces. With it being an electronics company, there's some like tech there. So got to talk with programmers and see how they talk, and then also talk with a lot of customers, and learned a lot about customer success, and just, listening to the customer, and trying to solution things for them, and come up with things that can make stuff work. And so I'd say that's probably the place where I got a lot of the foundation for things. But then after that, would have been, really just kind of being thrown into it and having to figure it out. I think we were all probably naive when we started it. Actually, definitely were naive when we started it. And a little while along the way, actually, Accelerate Okanagan, someone mentioned that we should join Accelerate and get some mentorship through there. And that was probably the first time where we had people, outside giving us recommendations. I remember that someone was like, "Hey, you guys have money. You could hire someone now. Why don't you do that?" And kind of sat back and went, "Oh, hey, that's a great point. I guess we could hire someone." It just never really crossed our minds that we were at that point where now we had like cash and we could do things like that. And so there definitely over the years, a lot of support, a lot of things. I remember Jeff Keane, who was the CEO there at the time. He's like, "Guys, like, get an office. Why don't you actually come in if you're taking this seriously, do that." And so we did that. And again, that helped, and just like suddenly hired more people. And different advice along the way from different people. Jason Richards as well, one of our investors. He was really helpful as we looked at that sort of market, and we were raising money, and what that looks like, how we think about the industry, how we think about tech in general. Lance Schaefer was another person at Accelerate Okanagan.
From Club Penguin?
No,
that's different Lance.
Yeah, that's different Lance. Lance was Lemon Free. I'm not sure actually where he is now. But he taught me the most simple thing that was, at the time, the most life-changing thing. I used to keep everything in my head in terms of like my tasks and stuff I had to do when I was starting out. And I just getting incredibly stressed by the amount of things that like the weight of everything that I had to do. Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I put everything in my calendar, even like loading the dishwasher." And I've never gotten to that extent, but the freedom in putting once I got it in my calendar, I'm like, oh, it's not that many items, and that's actually really easy to deal with. So I think there's a lot of little lessons from a lot of people along the way that had a really huge impact on the business, and that just continues today. So,
but joining Accelerate Okanagan was a big factor in building that network. It's really cool because you got successful in the email tool, but then saw this bigger opportunity from the customer, which is awesome. And then realized that there was maybe a more efficient go-to-market. If you had to start a SaaS company tomorrow from scratch, what would you say are the characteristics of that company that you'd want to be true?
It's
fun. You got 10 years to say, okay, take all that learning and then blank slate.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are watching this and they haven't started yet. So what would you say?
So I would say, in terms of if I was going to do things again and I could build my kind of ideal perfect company,
product,
in terms of making my
life
life easy, I would try to find something that has a huge sticker price that I was selling to enterprise or something like that, or something that people would buy themselves, but something with a really big sticker price, didn't require a lot of employees, and and probably something that I would be able to sell and do that to enterprise. It's interesting how much the one thing I think that we learned is the whole that sales engine and the marketing engine, and how many people it actually takes in coordinating all the different people at scale. It's amazing. And I remember at the beginning, in the early days, we were talking predictable revenue is what we based our sales model off of. And initially, I think there was talk, or some speakers came into town. They said, you need to have a product that's worth like $10,000 a year in order to really make money at this, if you're doing this sales system. And I was looking at it going like, well, we're selling for $10,000 a year. And we were selling at $2,000 a year. And I'm like, no, it seems like we're fine. We can still grow the business. And then suddenly, as we got bigger and bigger, it's like, oh, right, we need to add legal, and we need to add more SDRs, and we need to add this, and we need to add that. And all this overhead of the business that we didn't, we got away without when we were a small company. And just adding all those pieces and making sure they work together efficiently and having the right people in place to run all of them, that was a huge learning experience. And I think that's one of the neatest things that we did. And we found the right people in order to run those different pieces, and they've done an incredible job. But the learning of how many different pieces there are, and every day there's a new thing that we figure out with tweaking some efficiency of some handoff process between this team and that team, or changing the way that we're looking at leads or the areas that we're going after, and all the cascading effects through different teams that looks at, changing trial processes, everything. So if I was going to build my perfect thing, I don't know what it would be, but I'd say
expensive,
easy to sell,
not a lot of
and
people.
Ideally, the less people, the better for making your life easy. That being said, I love all our people.
You're like, team's rocking, but no, it's always interesting to start, ask yourself that question to see what comes up. When you look at, you mentioned some people that supported your journey. I'm not sure if you're an avid reader, but is there any books that, you mentioned Predictable Revenue. Is there other books that kind of had an impact on your career?
Yeah, Predictable Revenue, I think that would have been the really big one, where I was listening to the audiobook at the time, and I just heard this and I was like, oh, sales process, you can build a sales process. Looking back on it now, it all seems kind of funny, but at the time it was like a revelation, I think, just with our inexperience. And so that one was the big one. Over time, a number of different books. I loved reading books on sort of sales process and different things like that. And then, you know what? I read a lot of books on sales process. That was probably
Sales Acceleration. Have you read that?
Sales Acceleration Formula. That was another one.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So that was another one that I really enjoyed. And what I liked about the different ones is everyone, over time stuff changes as well. And so hearing different perspectives, and, one book will teach you a lot about sort of sales process and how to do that. And another one talks about the kinds of people that you want to look for in that role. And it's interesting reading some of those things, especially after we had made a lot of those decisions and learned a lot of things through hiring, and, what to look for, what we found worked and what we found didn't work. And then you read a book and you go, oh, funny, that's wish I read that a couple of years ago, because that would have been a lot easier. So
yeah, no, it's always interesting. Reading books about things to look for, and you ended up there, but it would have been a lot easier to learn it up front.
Yeah.
As my buddy Ryan calls it, the stupid tax. I was just like, dude, this is a lot of stupid tax you got to pay.
Yeah.
But that's the journey. What do you think from a mindset point of view? There's the skill set and then there's the mindset. What did you do to kind of develop the CEO mindset?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things as well that I always think about it as maybe like an evolving journey all the time. Like
100%.
When I look at myself, I go, man, there's probably like 80,000 things I could be doing better. And I think maybe, at least for me personally, that's been a great thing to drive me. And as I look at things, I go, okay, like, did I do as good as I could have with what I had? And every day I go like, no, I didn't. And then I kick myself and go, okay, you got to be better and do that better. So for me, I think that's really driven us. We kind of put our heads down and said like, hey, we need to figure this out. We cannot fail, and we just need to give it our all and make sure that we do that. And so I think that part of the mindset of just like drive, get it done. We're not like waiting for things to happen. And then combined with listening to people and taking advice, that's something that I think we've done well as well, is, the like mentorship and different people who can give you advice. It's really great, but sometimes those people are wrong and they don't necessarily know your industry. Even as I give advice to people, I find myself like making a disclaimer and being like, hey, I haven't done that part that you're talking about for like 5 years. So this might not be right, but here are my thoughts. Being able to discern and then make a decision and confidently move forward with something, I think is really huge. So that combination of like head down and just get it done, but like listen to advice, but still make sure that you're thinking about it like rationally and making your own decision that you think is best for your business would be kind of those two big things. And then, I had two things now, I'll add a third. Finding the right people. Like I'll always say, no matter what, the best thing ever is finding people that are better than you at different things and just letting them do it and get it out of their way.
But how do you get comfortable with doing that? Were you ever worried they'd join and realize you may not be as smart as they might have thought you were?
Yeah, I mean, it probably still happens every day.
Yeah.
But so for me, I had this realization before, because I used to really need to know everything that was going on, and I thought, I could do it better. A little bit of a perfectionist back in the day. And I just remember one day sitting there, I was doing an accounting thing at actually the water bottling plant in Africa. And I ran out of hours in the day, and I had this realization that like, if I try to do everything myself and I need to have everything running through me, I don't have enough time. And so I like made that conscious decision to, what I figured was sacrificing quality in order to just
Throughput.
out of necessity. Yeah. And then I watched the person who was doing it do a better job than me and went, okay. So from there, I think that's the thing that I've always, I try to look at and I go like, okay, this person can do it better than me, and they're like fully concentrated on that. I don't need to do everything. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. The biggest thing, and one of the biggest things that I've learned that I wish there's no book on, but once you work with someone who's an amazing person in that role and your mind just like flips and you realize what an incredible person that role looks like, that to me is like one of those biggest learnings, because next time you meet someone like that, I feel like you can recognize it right away and you go, oh, like that's one of those people. But when you start out, you don't know
that those people exist.
You don't know those people exist.
There's 10x people.
Yeah. And they join your business and you're just like, oh, wow, that's how good it could have been for the last 4 years. And if there's something that I wish I could like give advice on or figure out, is like how to find those people ahead of time, so that when you're actually going out and hiring, you really truly know what to look for.
That's huge. Yeah, no, when I go through life and I like see somebody at Starbucks or at the mall, and I'm just like, man, I need to find a way I can hire this person.
Yeah.
Like they're you can just tell that they're special, they're different. Entrepreneurship can be tough, even on a personal level, especially if your head's down. What are some of the sacrifices you've had to make to be the successful entrepreneur that you are today?
It's definitely a tough road. I mean, personal life, a lot of sacrifices there. I know Isaac and I, we chat about it quite a bit. Like, this will be the year where we go and we take some holidays and we take time off and we really spend some time like focusing on our health.
Is this the first time in a long time?
No, we say it every year.
Oh, okay.
So it's like an ongoing thing. But I think one of the biggest ones for sure in the early days was just the amount of time in it. And even these days, like, after 10 years of, late night phone calls on different items and things, because you're the person, it stops with you. And those types of things can definitely be strenuous on relationships, and trying to balance that. I think as entrepreneurs and just as people, there's always, I'll speak for myself, I guess. I have this balancing act of like balancing the family and what I'm trying to do for the family. And then the trying to do, and then like maybe what the family needs. And at times having my head down and like really focusing on trying to make sure that like everyone has everything they need. I probably miss sight of sometimes what is actually needed at the time. And so some of those calls that I had to do because I'm trying to take care, they probably didn't need to get done all the time. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest tolls on people around, but then also on yourself, because you're in this turmoil of trying to, you kind of feel like you can't do the right thing, because if you do one, you're sacrificing that piece. And if you do that, you're causing a problem here. And so that would definitely be something that's there. And then this would be the part probably with business, with family and friends and things that's one of the downsides, I would say, is, working with my brother and working with Isaac, my like best friend growing up. Every time we talk, it's about business. And so a lot of I'm probably the worst about it. My brother's a lot better than me, and Isaac's better than me. But yeah, so now my best friend is actually a business partner. And so less friend conversations and more things about business. So those would be the main things sort of on a personal level. And then just from a business level, I mean, again, at the end of the day, it stops with you. And so a lot of people get to go home and not worry about stuff on the weekends. But still to this day, as much as I've like really tried to now set a schedule so that I'm not working into the evenings and doing those late hours anymore, I'll still have nights where, I wake up and I start thinking about some random company thing, and you're up all night just, running that through your head, ideas for tomorrow. So, I don't know.
Takes a toll.
It takes a toll.
As we wrap up, Corey, I love asking people, when you look back at the person when you started this journey versus who you are today, managing this big company and responsibility and working through kind of the learnings in your evolution, who do you think you've had to become to be the person that gets to run a 100-person company?
Yeah, I think sort of to my last point, the person that I've had to become in order to really do it is not be the person who just like puts their head down and pushes through and powers through everything and grinds, because I definitely hit a point where that was not sustainable. So I've had to really step back and, still put my head down, still grind, still do that. But at the same time, realize that I need to also take time to, if I have a bad day or something like that and I need a day, like, you can take a day, it's fine. The world keeps on turning. And I think being able to step back a little bit, I guess looking at the business from the outside and all the different moving parts and things, if you're deep in it all the time, grinding away the whole time, you'll probably miss a lot of that stuff that's going on. Yeah.
That's awesome. Corey, if people want to reach out to you to say thanks for the interview, where's the best way they should find you online?
Best way to find me online that's a great question. Probably, I guess I'm on Twitter. I don't really use it that much, but I think I'm Corey J. Wagner on there. Otherwise, you can probably find me on Instagram, Corey J. Wagner.
Corey J. Wagner on the socials. Thank you so much, Corey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.